All right. As you know, this meeting is recorded and will be uploaded to public internet. So chances are whatever you say will remain there for almost ever. So let's just start the meeting. I have a few updates with respect to the development of the scheduler. One is that most of the extension points are already merged. There has been some issues with some of the extension points, particularly with respect to flakes and stuff. We are counting the number of times that the extension points or our plugins are invoked in our tests, and those sometimes cause flakiness because we didn't expect the scheduler to retry, for example, and things of that sort. So those are most of the flakes are addressed. I believe, Abdullah, you sent another PR yesterday to address another one too. So we are, of course, just developing these, and these are all new things. We expect them to have issues of this sort. We are addressing them, but hopefully we will get all of those sorted out in the very near future, hopefully this week. We're still waiting for one more extension point, and that's normalizes score, right? I guess one of you folks in Waterloo is working on it.
Yeah, I just figured it out.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have an ETA for it? When do you think it's going to be ready? Is it going to be next week?
Yeah, I hope to at least send out the PR early next week, if not this week.
Oh, sounds great. All right, this week is almost over, but yeah, that would be great. Thank you very much. So that's about the extension points and the scheduling framework. So I see as we speak, Wei is updating the other meeting notes for even pod spreading. Wei, what is the status? Do you want to give us an update?
Yeah, so regarding the even pod spread, they are in total. So I'm not sure if you can hear me. I'm at Portland in the OSCON.
We hear you. Your voice is a little breaking, but it's fine.
Okay, so I will keep it short. So in total, there are 6 PRs. I think the first one is API one, and Lavaland has given a green light on that. And we have 5 ones to go. And thanks Abdullah for the efforts of reviewing the second one, third one. I think we are almost come to a consensus on those 2 ones. So there are 3 ones to go. So after the 6 PRs can complete the reviewing, then we are good to merge into the master.
That's great. So how about the very first one? So the very first one, I believe, requires an approval, right, from the API folks. Is it approved already?
They didn't tag the /approve yet, but I think the logic is good for Lavaland to give a green light on that.
Okay, so maybe I should, either myself or Abdullah, one of us should, I will do it. I should ping Lavaland, which is Daniel Smith, ask him to approve the PR if he's.
Yeah. So according to our previous round of conversation with Lavaland and Legit, I think they won't give /approve until the whole series of implementation got eventual consensus. So my idea is that after we finish the reviewing of all the 6 PRs, then we can go back to API machinery folks, ask them to give a /approve.
I don't think the 6th one is necessary, like, because it's an integration test. Not necessarily not to submit, not necessary for the approval of the first PR. But the other ones, I think they are. I looked at all of them, by the way. The logic is good. I just think that we might be able to find room to optimize, but I don't think any comments that we'll be making are going to impact the API. So does it make sense to LGTM just to unblock the first one, and then we can continue discussions on how to improve the implementation?
Yeah, and that sounds like a good idea. And one more thing that I would like to add. Our first implementation does not have to be the most optimal solution, basically.
Okay.
We've done this with other approaches as well. For the first one, our focus should be on validity of the implementation, writing enough tests for it, making sure that it's very stable. This is going to be an alpha feature anyway, so it might not be the most optimized solution yet. Of course, if we can get all of them together at the same time, basically the most optimized as well as very stable, reliable implementation, that would be even better. But sometimes it becomes a little harder to, because sometimes these optimizations require addition of some complex data structures that makes verifying validity of the approach or logic a little harder. So for that reason, sometimes we go with simpler data structures that may not give us perfect performance, but at least it let us know that the solution is valid, and we can build enough tests to make sure that it's valid. For the next release, we can then optimize it, and now with having the tests and having the logic in place, we can more easily verify that the optimized solutions are valid as well. So that's one approach that we can take.
Yeah,
but
I
if
would love to ask Wei to actually rewrite the whole thing as a scoring plugin, but okay.
the whole thing. Well, this is not going to be just the score though. So
yeah,
the
score, normalized score, and
it could be part of it could be filter actually.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the predicate right now, but like maybe this is tangent, but I think we need to add another extension point, which is called like pre-score. And the reason is that the predicate in the even pod spreading is looking at all the nodes, not just the filtered ones, to compute some state. And the earliest extension point that allows us to do this is the pre-filter.
Yes.
I think it might be a bad idea because the pod could get rejected before it gets to the scoring phase where the actual predicate logic will get to be invoked.
So we should not probably reject the pod at pre-filter. But one thing that sometimes makes probably sense to do in pre-filter is to perform pre-processing. So it's similar to the metadata that we have for predicate and priority functions. Sometimes we create the metadata so that we can iterate over all the cluster nodes. Once generate some metadata that helps us run the predicates faster per node.
Right, and the issue is that for even pod spreading, there are two things. There's the hard constraint and the soft one. The soft one is implemented as a priority, which gets called after post filter, so way downstream. Mm-hmm. And the earliest extension point to compute the data that this priority function needs is going to be the pre-filter, because filter and post-filter, both of them operate at the node level, not at the list. The plugin gets called per node. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Pre-filter gets called over a pod and over all the nodes.
Correct.
And so if you want to compute that data, you'll have to do it at pre-filter. And my concern is the pod could get rejected at the filter phase or pre-filter phase or post-filter phase. Is that possible?
Post-filter, I actually have to go and look at the design doc again. I don't know if post-filter is...
Or filter, like anywhere between the pre-filter and the score.
Mm-hmm. So the filter essentially itself can reject pods, of course.
Right, so if that's the case, then we've pre-computed data for nothing. So that's why I'm suggesting that we add a pre-score extension point that allows you to do metadata computation for the priorities. Mm-hmm. So I can create an issue and
something. Right now I cannot really since I haven't looked at all the implementation yet. I was mostly focused on the API side, and I was hoping that the API could get approved sooner so that we can focus on the rest. But you have done more reviews. I don't have a very good image of the implementation in my head right now. I have to go and look, but sure, send your recommendation or suggestions, and then we can go from there.
So are we talking about basically having the API event spreading implemented using the extension points?
It should move into full plugins, yeah, eventually.
Okay, eventually, I see. Okay.
Yeah. That's the whole idea of the basically part of the idea of the framework is to rewrite all the predicates and priorities as plugins that gets called by the framework.
Okay. And where would these so they will still be part of the core Kubernetes, right? But they're just
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Like if you look at the stack algorithm, directory, you see predicates and priorities subdirectories.
Correct.
And those basically will be replaced by a bunch of features that implement plugins that gets registered when we instantiate the scheduler.
Got it. But they'll still be part of the core Kubernetes and okay, got it.
Yeah. All right. Since we don't have a whole lot of time and there are a few other items on the agenda, let's move on. There was this other PR by Draven that I actually suggested to send to remove critical pod annotation. This critical pod annotation existed because we didn't have priority at some point in the past in Kubernetes. And this particular annotation was used to indicate that a pod is very important and it should not get rejected or not. With the existence of priority, we no longer need this annotation. It was deprecated in 1.13 and we removed it very recently in 1.16, but it caused a regression. The problem is that static pods are created on a node directly. So for example, someone can SSH to a node and create a static pod. And then these static pods are on the node, like as a sort of like physical pod on the node before their corresponding pod object is created. So pod object for these nodes, for these pods are created afterwards. These are called mirror pods. These objects that we create are called mirror pods. This was kind of a hack. We're trying to get away from this kind of scenario, but they still exist today. And someone reported that this is causing, the removal of the annotation causes issues. And he's right, because what happens is that when a pod object is created, it goes through admission, and admission resolves the priority name or priority class name of a pod into the priority value. It's similar to like a DNS resolution. We have a name for a priority and it's resolved to the actual integer value. The problem for a static pod is that since the actual pod is created before the pod object, the pod object resolution or priority resolution happens afterwards. So when pod itself is created, Kubelet sometimes rejects it because the priority of this pod is not populated yet. This is a problem, and annotation was addressing this because we were honoring this annotation on the kubelet. But now, since the priority is not populated yet, the kubelet has no notion of criticality of this pod, so it sometimes rejects it when the kubelet is under resource pressure. So for that reason, we are reverting this change, basically removal of the annotation for now. I am working with the node of the SIG node to address this problem. We should probably add a small piece of logic to the kubelet to resolve priority of static pods before rejecting them, basically.
Static pods should go away completely because they are a risk, right?
Yeah. Static pods should go away completely. I agree. We have daemon sets now. They are a good replacement for static pods. There is no reason to have them anymore, I think. But since it's still there, and since there are users, we have to be respectful. So for that reason, we are reverting this. I guess it's already reverted, actually. We're reverting the removal of the annotation, but we are going to remove it again after this problem is addressed. So I see that there is another item added, brainstorming issue on feature gates versus custom scheduler policy versus effective predicate priorities. So who has added this? Do you?
Yeah, I added. So Yeah, when I write the integration test for the event path spreading, I realized that there's some inconsistency in between the three things, and I kind of draft the issue to list all the limitation, all the potential issues I have know. So for brainstorming, and the fourth one is a blocker for my integration test. So I drafted PR on that to make the function apply feature case stateless. And the other three ones, the first one is about validation. I think Ravi and some other guys are working on a PR, and the other two we need further brainstorming. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So I see the issue that you've created, and you have put a fair amount of information there. I would love to take another look later. Abdullah can help as well to take a look and see what we can do there.
Yeah, Mike is actually working on that.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot of information about that yet, so I cannot really tell much more. But sure, we can definitely follow up.
Yeah, I think Jordan also wanted this particular function to be stateless, and I understood their points, but it's just that we need to iron out the implementation details. What we need to do is something that we need to discuss.
Sounds good. All right. All right, one more quick thing. Pod overhead PR is ready, and it's getting merged to account for pod overheads when we calculate the amount of resources that pods require. Since we're running out of time, I don't want to spend much more time on that. There is a link in our meeting notes. You can go and take a look if you need more information. There is one more item with respect to the scheduler changes for pod spreading. I believe this is something that Mayank is working on. Is there anything else that we should know, Mayank?
Yeah, I think I got one review from V, and I addressed the changes. I still need to add UT, but I wanted somebody to take a look and see if the logic looks good. And yeah, I mean, we can make some progress on that.
Okay. So how about Ravi? Ravi, have you looked at that PR yet, or?
Yes, I have done that. I gave a quick first pass, but after that, Mayank has pinged me. I did not look into it. I'll look into it.
Okay, sounds good. So since I guess you are the maintainer of the scheduler, it makes sense for you to take a look and review that.
Yeah, I think Wei is also helping me out on the API side. So
yeah, I will also take a look next week. This week I don't have much time.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
So I think we have gone over all of the items that we have on the agenda. All right, we have still a few more minutes. I know that there are a few folks on the meeting. Is there anything from you guys that we need to know? Or you have any questions or comments?
I have a couple of things, but I'll let others talk first.
Sure. I guess.
Just one thing. Sorry, Bobby. So just one thing. So I just don't want to confuse people. So I just mentioned that since the routine is that unless the whole implementation for the event path spreading is get a consensus, then we can merge one by one. But according to based on scheduling perspective, we want the API part merged as soon as possible. So if we can persuade the API folks to merge that one / approve that one, that would be the best solution. If not, we can merge one by one. Yeah, just don't want to get people confused.
Right. No, I agree with you. I hopefully will manage to convince Daniel or Jordan to approve that PR so that can be merged. Because there are a lot of steps, and it makes sense to go step by step and verify each step before going to the next one. I mean, that would be ideal for us. I will try.
I was working on a SIG auth feature, and I think the same pushback was there. Like until you have the implementation with the API, they don't want to merge.
So we have the implementation. That's the thing.
Right. But I mean, that's the pushback. I'm just I think they might make an exception. I mean, this is a big feature, so I think it will help we do the implementation as well. But yeah, I think if we can convince, that would be helpful.
Yeah, certainly. I will certainly try. Hopefully.
I think every the other week I need to spend 1 hour or more on the rebasing thing.
I'm so sorry about that. Yeah, definitely. I will try. So hopefully that will be done soon.
We have one more update about physical host labeling.
Yeah, short update. I've been working with the SIG cloud provider to get this label defined. So the last step that we did is send a survey to all the cloud providers to see whether or not they like the idea and whether or not they can actually provide expose the topology. So yeah, next SIG cloud provider meeting, we're gonna take a vote on this, where yes or no.
Okay, sounds good. Do you want myself or Abdullah to be present in that meeting? Abdullah, do you go to that meeting?
Yeah, I went with Aldo the first time. I'll go.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be helpful because I think we probably need more voices there to point out the importance of this and basically give all the reasons that why we need this and why it's important. I think right now, actually, other VMware themselves have this problem that this does not exist. This label does not exist, and they are using other labels, like zones, apparently, for populating physical hosts, and that does not really work well. So we should probably go there and have more voices there. Hopefully, we can.
Now, Tim Clare has responded on the chat saying that this is thorny and means that we are treating labels as API constants. So we're getting feedbacks from different directions.
I agree with his point. What is his alternative solution?
Yeah, he didn't. Like he just tagged us and tagged Tim Hawkin and others from the SIG architecture to look into it as well.
Right. So we already treat certain labels differently, and we care about certain labels, particularly node and zones. These are the things that our scheduler already treats especially. I don't know if that's not a good idea. We should probably go away from all of these and replace them with something else. But that something else should be defined. Right now, there is nothing. So, and also another problem is that if some of these labels are automatically populated by the underlying infrastructure, like for example, node and zones and all are populated automatically by the underlying infrastructure. These are, I would say, these are like some formal labels, and these are part of our API anyway. So I don't know why there is particular concern about this other one, which is like physical host spreading for physical host labels. So we should basically get more clarity there to see what the exact reasons are.
The point is determine why we need this extra label and not instead of what providers are doing these days, which is basically use zone to represent the instance.
But zones, I mean, we need zones as well. So you may have like a lot of physical hosts in a single zone. So zone cannot be used as a replacement for physical hosts.
Yeah, right. So what I'm saying is that there are some providers, especially in vSphere, they are using zone for representing the instance host, and they are using region to represent their rack or data center.
No, but I mean, they have created sort of a hack because there didn't exist some other better alternatives. But that does not necessarily mean that whatever they're doing is the best solution. I don't like those because physical hosts can be in particular zones, and you can have data centers in multiple zones in the same region. So you may still need all of those other labels like zones and regions while you're also using physical host label. So yeah, that's not a great excuse really to not have this extra label. Anyway, so we're running out of time. There is 1 more minute. Is there any other question or comment?
I have one related to the resource quota that needs a review.
Okay.
That's something that I see 115, and I'd like to get that in 116.
Okay. So can you send it to me or Abdullah, one of us, for another round if there is anything left to be done?
Yeah, I think we have already reviewed it. You told you have to look at the tests. You have done like half review of that.
I see. Okay, it's one of those things that I've forgotten about. Okay, so yeah, if you can just send it over to me on Slack, that would be useful.
Okay.
Sorry, if I have not been super responsive recently. I have other projects, and actually things might get worse. But luckily, Abdullah and his team are covering, and you will see their presence even more.
Thank you. We're getting kicked out.
All right. I will probably be kicked out very soon as well. All right. Thank you.
Guys. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.